Some very important things are about to happen that I want you guys to be aware of. In a couple of hours, but at the time you're watching this, it might already be over, we've got the Fed Chair Powell speaking. Now, if you guys did not take a look at it, I recommend you guys to do so because he usually gives away what they're going to be talking about a couple days later. As you can see here, on November 2nd, we've got the Fed interest rate decision, and then quickly afterwards the Fed press conference, both of which are extremely important as it basically gives you an idea, a gauge of where the economy is headed. From the perspective of the decider, not actually about how the people are doing. No, this number is lagging and it's not a real accurate representation of anything. I suppose it could just help us theorize things. On that note though, we do have tomorrow the ECB's interest rate, and even though it's not as crucial as the one from the US, it is interesting to see that they're trying to keep the interest rate the same. And so if it deviates from this number, that could be pretty significant. And again, you don't have to actually watch this speech, as I don't think the market is going to move too much just because of the speech, but he might prepare you for whatever is happening right here, November 1st/2nd. And so it's good enough to just look up an article or wait for my video tomorrow where we cover it. On that note, car owners. Sometimes I just feel like to fully make the most amount of money on crypto or make the most amount of money in general, you've got to understand where your economy is at. We've often said the biggest shift in crypto is going to be the traditional finance people heading over, but they'll probably only do so when pushed, when things really hit the fan and are so bad they've got to move over. Car owners fall behind on payments at highest rate on record. The risk of vehicle repossession is rising for many Americans facing a budget crunch. And the reason I said at the start here that the interest rate, and for that matter inflation as well, is not really a very good representation of how things are doing is because on one end, it keeps looking like things are getting better. But then on the opposite end, we are seeing economists say a small recession or a recession of some sorts, or at least a slowdown of the economy, albeit not necessarily negative GDP, but just a hefty slowdown, is looming. And if we're realistically looking at how prices have performed, especially versus wages, or just literally looking at the purchasing power right now. Anyway, my major point there being that if you really start looking at the back end of things, the economy is screwed, man. And you know why Larry Fink said that crypto is a flight to quality? Because so many companies are doing so good, even though the fundamentals are garbage. And I'd say from a layer up, the government is looking so beautiful and clean, right? When in reality, the major asset managers are mostly focusing on long-term things, not short-term, because they know things are actually screwed. And then once you start looking at how the consumer, the general Joe, the normal person is doing, they're not doing good. Matter of fact, it's only getting worse. The last time the US yields rose so much, it sank the economy twice. 10-year treasury yield, right? Basically, they're going for these long terms instead of short terms now. 10-year treasury yield is up over 4% points since 2020. The biggest increase since double-dip recessions in 1980. There's a good reason why investors are amazed that something hasn't broken in the economy yet. The last time U.S. government bond yields climbed so far, so fast, the nation plunged into back-to-back recessions. The 10-year treasury yield, a key baseline for the cost of money across the financial system, has jumped more than 4 full percentage points over the past 3 years, briefly pushing it this week over 5% for the first time since 2007. Hopefully you all remember that year. It's the biggest increase since the run-up in the early 1980s, when Paul Volcker efforts to slay inflation pushed the 10-year yield to nearly 16%. In one sense, the similarities are no surprise, since Fed Chair Jerome Powell's interest rate hikes have been the most aggressive since then. In another, it underscores just how much times have changed. In the 1980s, the monetary policy onslaught set up 2 recessions, and now the economy has continued to defy pessimistic forecasts, with the Atlanta Fed's estimate showing that in the third quarter, it likely even gained steam. As you can see, bond yields rise at the fastest pace since the early 1980s. And now here's an article that popped up about 20 minutes ago or so. Fundamental Rethink. investors dump China shares despite new efforts to shore up the economy. Again, see it as you want to. I personally think that even though a lot of these articles are making it seem as if a lot of money is flying out of China and that money out of Asia specifically, just Asia as a concept, is moving into crypto, I will tell you that if I had to pick a contender as the next power behind the US, it's gonna be either India or China. And I think a lot of this is just FUD, which has to do with some of the Chinese fundamentals, which are not completely in order. But if you really start thinking about it, are they really doing worse than the US? I honestly think it's, for the most part, just Chinese looking to invest elsewhere in other sectors rather than really this heavy dumping of Chinese stocks at an unprecedented pace. Again, that I would ask, is that a relative number? On an opposite side, I will say that Hong Kong and over in Beijing and a couple other places, they're incentivizing business hard, putting up a lot of new grants, putting up a lot of new incentives, which obviously do show that things are not amazing. But in the reality of things, I do still wonder if they're doing worse than the US is. And I'm not fully talking about just price action. I'm mostly talking about the fundamental perspective, as in, is the longevity of this really that bad? Because it could just be that the US is holding themselves on better, even though the fundamentals of it are way worse. So once more, just because the price of an asset is going down more than the price of another asset does not mean that asset is worse in terms of fundamentals. It might just be that that asset is more accurately priced and the other one is being held up like a bubble. Anyway, to relate this all back to crypto, we all know that BlackRock is doing a little bit of a dick measuring contest, is like how I like to call it. I still believe that from every field, the crypto market is moving exactly in the way in which they wanted it to move. A lot of pieces are interesting. The fact that that ticker was actually talked about so many months ago, yet it's starting to become such a big thing now. BlackRock showing so much interest in crypto, yet the price is staying down, but all of a sudden things now opening up. I still believe there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye. And before I move on, I wanted to tell you guys one quick story as to why, because I see this very often, I choose XRP over Ethereum when it comes to the next bull run. I want to quickly say, I'm a big holder of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. It's actually so very often that I have more in Ethereum than in anything else. Why? I've told you guys my strategy before. I maximize the value of my portfolio. I don't like to be that guy who thinks, oh, if I could only pick one coin, which one would it go? Because it doesn't matter. I don't have to choose only one coin. I can maximize the effectiveness of my portfolio. And as I said 1,000 times, I think Bitcoin gains first. But there were a lot of hints that this time around, it could be Ethereum getting some extra pushes at the start, which turned out to not completely be true. But Ethereum is just, if you're into DeFi, Ethereum is just so convenient, even though I'm not as bullish on it. And the main reason I'm not so bullish on it is because if you take a look at gas, it's just so stupid. Yesterday, I had to send some money around, had to do some transactions. And all of a sudden, approving is going from a fun little task like it was all week. This is simply put, basically the price of gas you're paying. On Ethereum, if you want to transact, you have to pay. With XRP, it's basically free, but you can see it went from about 6, which it's normally at, to like 40 or even like 47 at some points, which means it's getting about 8 times as expensive. Taking, a simple transaction of, let's say, $2 to now, let's just call it $25 or so. That's on average basically the big change here. And what we sometimes like to do is just kind of see how busy things are. What I like to do is just kind of see how backlogged transactions are and how things are coming along. And just, if you really start looking into it, Ethereum from that perspective, even though they went to proof of stake, has not fully fixed themselves just quite yet. But with XRP, there's not really that issue. And so right now, the bull run is not really at full potential, but if right now already those transactions are peaking so hard, then I do kind of wonder what it's going to be at over the next couple of months as the bull market really does come back in. Just how high will one transaction's price be? And that's honestly the main reason why in a bull market, I step away from Ethereum so much, because from the almost any value proposition, it's not so good. Ethereum itself is only as good as the things building on there, but from a gains perspective, I'd rather have the things building on there because they're less established, so they'll gain more. But also at the time, as it gets more usage and those things we're investing in, they do well, it just shows you how expensive Ethereum gets. And so then layer 2s and things of that sort start to pop off and do exceedingly well, which makes you think again, so why then Ethereum, if you can also just notice Ethereum is doing so garbage, so you go for something like the Binance Smart Chain, Polygon, or something along those lines. Arbitrum, you pick it. I will say there's another reason why I'm still holding a lot of Ethereum, and that's because we're building a lot of Ethereum, what can be best summarized as things, honestly, mostly to manipulate the mempool, or rather manipulate your transactions, or transactions in general, because that's a relatively important thing, especially as this space grows. To know exactly how that works is huge, and I think building solutions in that field is also huge, so we're funding a lot of that. Anyway, man, I've been changing my philosophy a little bit as well, guys. I really am reminiscing about some of those top altcoins which we used to know and love, like Solana and VeChain. The value proposition just keeps getting better for these now as well. And I keep seeing people say, Dusty, do you think Ripple can still lose? No, I don't think so. There's not really any way in which Ripple can lose. I'm going way too fast. Quickly to say about Solana, it's just a little bit undervalued. I don't think Solana is the best cryptocurrency out there. Heavy institutional backing though. The only problem is FTX had so much. I do wonder if more sell-offs in that nature will be happening. VeChain is amazing. I came across many founders of VeChain. There's a lot of them. And the explanation is just that they are huge. Got amazing partnerships, but they know as well that if you want to make the real money, it's more in the finance space, DeFi space. Supply chain that VeChain is fixing is amazing, but it will not make you the most amount of money. So even though it's, I personally think, still an amazing crypto to be part of, and I do think they'll succeed at whatever they want to do, I just believe there will be other options getting you better gains. With regards to this article right here, right now we're waiting for Ripple to either come together to think of a fine with the SEC, or for the SEC to fully give up, or basically let Ripple decide, and that's about it. It's just waiting for the fine. So there's no real can Ripple lose. It's just will the SEC eventually appeal or throw in the towel and just discuss the fine right now. At the end of the day, I think the fine has to be discussed first before the SEC is able to appeal anything else, which can take a few months. But even then, the chance of the SEC then still winning is so ridiculously small, because from no field does it make sense, whatever argument they could pull up. And look at that, huh? Bitcoin breaking out. Probably this chart will look a significant amount different when I upload the video, because I think it's going to take another couple hours before I get it out. But right now, at the time of viewing this is looking pretty nice. Seems we are actually, depending on where we close right now, just breaking our previous high levels yet again. So $35,000 seems very, very close, or at least a little touch of that before having some sort of correction. I will keep warning you. Bull market being back, as I've said 1,000 times, means we have confirmed that there will be no more dip below 14,000, 15,000. It does not mean it's going to be one continued push towards the upside, but I do believe that from a risk-reward perspective, getting into crypto right now is better than being out, because I do personally believe the chance of me just waking up seeing Bitcoin at 41,000 or something like that are way higher than me waking up and seeing it at $19,000 or $14,000 again. And just like this, Bitcoin went from 30, 29, 30, 31 to 34,000 in a snap. It'll probably go like that again towards 41, or let's say at least 39, and then just in big shifts. There might be some small corrections in the midst that could be significantly deeper than we saw here. It's just the honest truth. But the bull market being going on or being busy here means that our strategies we've been talking about for a while are now being put into place. So we're looking right now for the better altcoins to go for. We're not fully going for them yet because Bitcoin still has to take on a little bit more dominance, but we're looking into it. We are looking into it. Here's Bitcoin's dominance. You can see it's still picking up the pace, but I do believe it has to be a little bit higher before it moves over to altcoins. Yeah, that's about it.